Hello, I'm Demi Utley, the founder here at Utley Strategies, and today I'm going to cover how exactly you can implement one of the most common business writing tips, and that is to make your content brief and clear. So brief and clear content sounds great in theory, but if you've ever drafted a document, especially a technical proposal, only to find out that it's way too long, then you may be wondering how exactly you can actually put this into practice. So in today's video, I'm going to share with you a few of my favorite strategies that I personally use in proposal writing to improve the clarity of your proposal and just make your writing overall a little bit easier to read for the buyer. So let's go ahead and get started. My first strategy is to draft the main points first. So the key to clarity in your proposal is to make sure that you know exactly what it is that you want to be emphasizing and conveying throughout the document. So what I do is before I even start drafting the content, I go through the main sections and then I jot down key points or key ideas that I want to emphasize within those sections. So I go through and just write down notes on all of those. And then I use that as the starting point and sort of my guiding posts for actually writing the content. So what I do is I go through, I have all these points, and then I go back and I write the content to expand upon each of those points. And I make sure that I don't add in anything that doesn't relate to supporting those points. So the goal here is to really stay focused on what exactly it is that we want to show and that we want the customer to understand when they're reading through the proposal, and to avoid kind of digressing into other subjects or topics that might be good for our company, but maybe don't directly relate to what it is that we're selling and the buyer's current needs or challenges. So I like to have, 3 to 5 points within each section, and then I just expand upon those. Make sure you don't add anything else, and then you should hopefully have a little bit clearer of a proposal at the end of this exercise. Another strategy that you can use to make your proposal a little bit clearer is to go through and eliminate jargon or any unnecessary words throughout your proposal. So both of these are the enemy of clarity. If you're drafting content and you have a lot of words or wordy phrases or a lot of jargon within your proposal, then it could be really hard for the buyer to just easily read through your proposal and understand exactly what it is that you're trying to say. So one thing that I like to think about is if someone in our company or outside of our industry wouldn't understand a particular phrase or a particular term, then that means that someone who's on the buying committee might not understand that as well, which is going to make it, of course, harder for them to understand your overall proposal. So in those cases, make sure you go back and cut out those words or that jargon and just replace it with something that's going to be either a shorter phrase or that's just a little bit clearer for someone to understand. Another way to make your proposal a little bit clearer and a bit more brief is to use shorter words and sentences throughout your proposal. So one of the ways that you can do this is go through and look for longer sentences in your proposal. So I normally watch to see if something is more than 3 lines long. And if that sentence is more than 3 lines long, then that means that I need to go through and split it into 2 sentences or cut out a bunch of the words. You can also look to see if you have any just like long words. That's normally a sign of jargon as well. So you can replace those with shorter, easier to read and understand words just to make your proposal just a little bit clearer for the buyer. Another point that you can do is to start incorporating bullet points throughout your proposal. So I find that bullet points are one of the best ways to make your proposal not only skimmable, but also clear and easy to digest, because it encourages you to think about specific points that you're including rather than large chunks of text, which are easier to, ramble whenever you're including that much content. So anytime you're using a list, of course, break those into bullet points. You can also incorporate those into tables as well. And then you can also add bullet points for anything that you want to highlight in your proposal. So for example, if you have a paragraph that's talking about your team's expertise, maybe you have one introductory sentence and then you have a few bullet points that's talking about different ways that your team has a lot of expertise, and each bullet point might have, a sentence supporting it. So that's one way that you can incorporate bullet points just to make your proposal a little bit clearer and easier to read. Another thing that you can do is you can go through and actually break up your paragraphs into shorter paragraphs. So similar to sentences, you want your paragraphs to be easy to read and you want them to be shorter because that makes them easier to read. Another thing to think about as far as like your paragraph structure and format is that most people are skimming through your proposal. And when they're skimming, typically what they do is they go through and they read the first sentence or even the first word of a paragraph. And if it seems like it gives them enough information, or if it's not something they want to read about right now, they'll move on to the next paragraph and do that with that paragraph as well. So if you have shorter paragraphs, they will, by nature, even if they're skimming, read more of your proposal because they're going to read that first sentence. So if you have 5 paragraphs, they're going to read 5 sentences, whereas if you only have 3 long paragraphs, they would read 3. So you can see how they would read more of your proposal if you have it a little bit shorter. That does not mean make every paragraph just 1 sentence. You still want it to be, full paragraphs. A good rule of thumb is about 3 to 6 sentences per paragraph. And make sure that you're always starting a new paragraph when you're switching subjects. Another thing that you can do to break up long chunks of text is to incorporate subheadings in between those paragraphs. So for example, if you have 3 paragraphs about your product, instead of just having 3 paragraphs, you might have subheadings before each paragraph that call out that point or that specific piece of information you're conveying. So you might have one that's about like your support team or something like that, or one about your product. Just do what makes sense for you and incorporate subheadings to make your proposal a little bit easier to scan and also just a little bit clearer. Another thing that you can do is to include visual elements such as tables, graphics, and other visuals. So if there's a way to visually display your point, then I would recommend including that because it's just a little bit easier to see a visual element and interpret the information than it is text. I like to have about 1 to 2 visual elements per page if possible, so try to target that within your proposal. And since the majority of readers are scanning your proposal, they're not reading it word for word, they're going to actually see whatever the visual element is first rather than reading the text. So if you have something that's interesting and grab their attention and conveys a key point, then it's going to make it easier for them to walk away with exactly what you want them to walk away with when they're reading through your proposal. So definitely don't be shy about including visual elements within your proposal because they can make it a little bit briefer and clearer and just easier to read and evaluate for the buyers. Okay, so those were all of my tips for today. Incorporating all of these elements will make your proposal a little bit more enjoyable for the reader and also more effective. I'll share more tips on proposal writing in future videos, so make sure you go ahead and subscribe. In the meantime, check out resources at the links below, and I'll see you in the next video.